Right. Hi, everybody. Hey, today we've got a special treat. We have Peggy Phillips joining us for this a guest post. Peggy wrote a post about 3 years ago about coping with estrangement. And she wrote to me a little while ago explaining how things have changed in the 3 years. And I thought, great, we need to get an update, need for her to write something and to get her back on the video again. So, welcome, Peggy. We're looking forward to what you're going to say. And after you've said it, we're just going to have a little discussion about it and got a few questions and comments. So, Peggy's just going to read the blog post and then we're going to have a discussion. Great. Thanks, Peggy. Take it away.
All right. Thank you. All right. So this is on how to finding a lifeline in the quicksand of estrangement. After my son went no contact, the quicksand of estrangement engulfed every part of me. But 2 years later, an unexpected lifeline led to the unanticipated renewal of our relationship. 3 years ago, I shared my experience with ambiguous grief, the pain of an unresolved loss, on the Turning the Page YouTube channel. I spoke about the unforeseen anguish and the isolation of mourning without closure, and the absence of familiar rituals to mark the loss. But like entrapment in quicksand, the grief of estrangement, it disempowers, it overwhelms, and it drains our emotional reserves. Survival becomes our mission. In our embattled state of mind, we thrash about in the flurry of conflicting emotions. We cling to our narrative around the situation as if it's the last shred of the relationship that is no more. We stay hyper vigilant to contrasting emotions. We stand guard in defense. We wait for this nightmare to worsen, and yet we peer hopelessly into the distance, despairing that this nightmare will ever end. So, unlike the loss of a relationship by death, which can be mourned by family and friends, my need for support in the ambiguous grief of estrangement was met only with disdain and dismissal by people whom I thought I could trust. But when I shared my story in the compassionate presence of Barry on the Turning the Page podcast, I no longer felt alone in my grief. So when you're stuck in quicksand, how do you get out? How can you climb out from this foreboding weight of the ambiguous grief of estrangement? Well, the same way you can get out of quicksand in nature. Use your tools, like a pole or a branch that you can use as a lifeline in quicksand. Resources such as books or websites, they can help you make sense of the loss, and they can help you climb out of grief. We hope. Similarly, connecting with friends or support groups or therapists, I mean, that may be an option to help you navigate your journey. But be aware that ambiguous grief is grief in isolation. Seeking material resources may only amplify your sense of isolation because we have no one with whom to share or process our insight. Likewise, for those who suffer the isolation of ambiguous grief, the soft tools of that we can turn to, like the interpersonal connections, those are just not available because our friends, support groups, therapists, they just cannot relate to our grief. Perhaps then the most valuable tool is the gift of non-judgmental presence from another. So the presence of another means that that person is fully engaged mentally and physically with the other person through active listening, genuine curiosity, and emotional awareness, which altogether builds trust. It helps the other feel seen. I didn't recognize it at the time, but feeling seen and heard in my grief, that was the tool that I needed, and that I by which I found self-agency to begin the long, slow extraction from the quicksand of estrangement. After my story posted, I noticed an inner calm unknown to me since my son cut me off years ago. Like a lifeline to someone sinking in quicksand, feeling seen and heard in my struggle, it shifted my focus from resistance to receptivity. And it was that shift that ultimately allowed for the renewal of my relationship with my son. So let's talk about quicksand a little bit. So when you're stuck in quicksand, the more you thrash, the tighter its grip and the faster you sink. And so likewise, in the grief of estrangement, in vain we combat the dragons of our relationship loss, those painful narratives, the beliefs and the emotions around the estrangement. But as much as we thrash and we fight, we are never able to find the power to slay them. So instead of fighting and resisting, be still and reduce the resistance. Suspend the feverish quest to seek reasons, answers, or plot twists for why the relationship evaporated. These are all fruitless endeavors and busyness that only yields emotional exhaustion. For me, that meant I stopped obsessively searching websites, blogs, and other social media, seeking answers, insight, and healing. Doing so, it only reactivated my threatened state of mind. It just made me thrash and resist even more. I stopped sinking when I stopped resisting. Um, Tip number 2, distribute the weight and float to the surface. So what does this mean? Well, quicksand, it allows buoyancy, but only if you align yourself to it. In quicksand, if you lean back, spread your arms, and gently and slowly move your legs, the quicksand will float you to the surface and gonna let you come to rest in somewhat of a horizontal position. And this alignment is absolutely necessary. It's a necessary precursor to unlocking the grip of quicksand, and the same with an estrangement. So floating to the surface on your back in quicksand, like stopping the resistance, you feel vulnerable, especially when you feel alone. But I discovered that this is a useful metaphor for your aligning yourself with the meaning and purpose of your suffering. And once you align yourself with the meaning and purpose of your suffering, I found that was the necessary precursor for authentic healing, growth, and change. So a few weeks after I shared my story, I don't know how, one day my daily prayer intention shifted. Instead of begging God to change my situation, I pleaded for God to change me. And change me he did. Now, this is not a new concept. Saints, theologians, people who have been through difficult times in their life, they will all attest to this. God doesn't he doesn't respond to us like he's a vending machine. We ask him to change us, not our situation. And it's when we arrive at that point that true change really starts to happen. So over the next few months, I examined the estrangement from a more objective viewpoint, which inspired me to look beyond the issue that activated my son's estrangement and explore other avenues for growth and change. The next thing you should do if you're trapped in quicksand, the rule of thumb is to remove your backpack if you're wearing one. You want to reduce the weight. So too, once I stopped resisting, once I aligned with my higher purpose and higher power and the meaning of my suffering, it was time to remove the baggage. And in the narrative of estrangement, that's the narratives and beliefs about yourself, the other, your relationship, your past, your future, the narratives that no longer serve you or serve them. And that is probably the most difficult part of growing through estrangement. Instead of trying to rename or repack my narratives, I replace them with new, more authentic beliefs about who I am. One day, again, while in prayer, I don't know what brought it on, but I was inspired to explore the concept of archetypes. And these are universal symbols and patterns that influence human behavior. In particular, and there are dozens of archetypes. You find them throughout literature, all kinds of literature, movies. And if you're an intentional viewer or reader, you can pick up on the archetypes in a given story. But in particular, the archetypes of the crone, the healer, and the mystic resonate with my journey and who I am. The crone commands the power to transform the trials of life into the gold of wisdom. The mystic embodies a deep spiritual connection to higher truths. And the healer symbolizes the ability to mend and nurture through physical care, emotional support, and spiritual guidance. And I might add that you can't just decide, oh, I want to be a crone because I like that archetype's characteristics. The crone becomes the crone is a female archetype, and they become a crone, not really, but in their mindset and who they believe they are after they've gone through many trials in life and emerged on the other side with a new set of wisdom, with new wisdom that they use in compassion with themselves and with others. The mystic seeks to find the sacred in everything, in all things, the sacrament in every moment. And the healer relies on empathy, kindness, generosity to heal oneself and those around them. So once you're able to move in quicksand, you need to move slowly. Once you have a strategy for getting out, don't rush it. Extracting yourself from quicksand is a slow, steady, persistent process. If you get rushed and erratic, you're only going to get pulled back into the dark narratives, and you're going to be fighting the dragons again. So likewise, it was my emergent from the quicksand of estrangement. Through months of prayer and intentional focus and purpose, I began to cultivate and nourish those traits that are innately a part of who I am. So how did me and my son, how did we reconnect? Like, how did this work out? Well, about a year after my prayer intention shifted, the dynamic between my son and I just appeared again. One day out of the blue, he called. It was a Friday afternoon. I was at work and he called. He'd undergone minor surgery a few days prior and he was seeking some post-op advice. I'm a nurse. The call, he began with, hey, I have a quick question. This won't take but a minute. It evolved into a 3-hour conversation. We never discussed the cataclysmic event that activated the estrangement. We still haven't, and we probably never will. But after the first few minutes, I intuited the healer in me, the crone in me, the mystic in me. They all intuited that he just yearned to share what's been going on in his life since we last spoke more than 2 years before. More profoundly, I realized that his reaching out was an invitation from my higher power to express my archetypal traits, the wisdom, the spiritual connection to higher truth, and the emotional and spiritual healing. At the outset of our relationship rebuild, I let my son reach out first. Sometimes weeks or months pass between contact. Over time, our relationship has evolved. Nearly 4 years later, we've reestablished our relationship almost to where it was, but with the rich patina of a mature husband and father connecting with his mother. So throughout that time, I have worked to heal and nurture the relationship with the gift of my presence through active, compassionate listening and staying attuned to the higher truths and what he shares with me. The work of Providence. So in reflecting in this whole journey through the quicksand of estrangement, and my emergence through it, I've realized the following truth. The only path forward is the path of self-awareness through growth and change with the intention to become a more authentic version of oneself. I believe the synchronicity or the providence, that just the timing on how this all unfolded, I believe that by which our relationship was reestablished was none other than the work of Providence, the Holy Spirit, karma, whatever your belief system. It was the universe at work. First, the opportunity to share my story, then the subsequent quiescence of my struggles and my resistance, then the shift from self-centered prayer to God-centered prayer, the movement from constricted space, the constricted space of fear and threat and anxiety and anger, to the boundless grace of growth and change. So no doubt, had I not allowed and received the gift of presence from another and the subsequent interior movement toward growth and change during this whole season of estrangement, I would have been ill prepared for a new relationship when my son, when he finally returned. I believe God's timing is always perfect, and God is good.
Wow. Peggy, that's marvelous. It's a wonderful story on so many different levels. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask you. Okay, you mentioned
Okay.
that um, you went off and looked for books and all this content material, but in the end, actually, they were helpful, but actually, it was more a personal journey in yourself. Um, Looking back now, what resources actually did help um, you? Was there certain books, um, yeah, that helped you?
Uh, so what I found helped me, and everyone is unique and
Yes.
their journey is unique to them, but what I found helpful to me was the prayer and meditation. Um, and then as far as resources, the shadow work and studying the archetypes.
Wow. Yeah.
Before this ever happened to me, I had only known a little bit about archetypes, but I really just started digging into it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
They're good.
I was able
Yeah.
to relate to the three. And once you
Yes.
can identify what the archetype resonates with me, then I kind of feel like that's a person's call. That's their invitation
Yes.
to
Yes.
grow that authentic part of yourself.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely. Um, and when you talked about those particular archetypes, I resonated with those three. For me, not the crone, it's more of a sage archetype, which is a male version of crone, I suppose. But it's got a lot of softer edges to it. And so, okay, further question. How are you now in those archetypes? From how are you feeling about being in those archetypes? How has it changed your life?
oh, I think that it has had profound
Yeah.
growth in all of my relationships at work, in my relationship with myself, in my relationship with people that I just pass on the street, patients that I care for, other family members, because
Yes.
I'm able to see them through the lens of the crone or through the lens of wisdom. Again, it's not
Yes.
I'm not just seeing them through my experience of them. I'm able to see their experience of me as well as their experience as they move through the world. The I think the most profound shift and is the movement from self-centered focus and prayer to God-centered or other-centered.
Yes. That's beautiful. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you think back and well, that's just so simple. Why don't we like that? We're
Not
supposed to think
simple.
of other people, but it takes for some reason it's just not natural for a lot of people. It's not wasn't natural for
It's
me.
not.
We just get so all about me. So that's probably the most profound um, growth. And then, of course, nurturing the mystic in me, where I always felt like I've seen tried to find the sacred in the moment, the sacrament of the present moment, the sacred in nature and in people. And then the healer. I felt like I've always been a person of great empathy and sensitivity, and I've um, really worked to allow myself to express that. In our
Yes.
culture, empathy and
Yes.
sensitivity is not it's not received kindly. I mean,
No.
ironically, but I, have been able to learn to express that more.
Have you actually done Myers-Briggs personality test? Have you done what's your, do you know what that is?
Okay, so Myers Briggs. Did you say Myers Briggs,
Yeah,
or
personality
or what
test.
did you?
Myers, like I'm an INFJ. Okay.
Oh yeah, I'm an INFJ and
Well,
I'm
there
an
we go.
Enneagram Four.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm an
I'm an
Enneagram 6.
INFJ
So,
and I'm an
um,
Enneagram Four.
for our viewers and yeah, I'd encourage you to start exploring those particular personality types because it can become a very empowering way to actually discover how you've been wired by God, um, for this world and what you can bring to this world that no one else can, but you can. And so Peggy and I, we are the INFJs, which are a very small little percentage of people, but it's wonderful to meet another one. So going back, when you were in the quicksand, what were your day-to-day type ropes
Oh,
to keep you from sinking? Practical stuff, day to day.
oh, um, well, a lot. There were very, very many difficult days where
Yeah,
they were just a blur, and it was all I could do to just look and act normal to my other children and my job. But inside, I was shattered. I was just crumbling. But I had to be a good actor and go on stage. Um, but
yep,
inside, the way that I was able to cope was once I realized that there is a purpose to this suffering. I don't know
yes,
what it is, but my creator does not does not put me into suffering without a reason or a purpose for me to grow. and and I was kind of so I was inspired. So another way I got through was I leaned on inspiration from the saints. I'm of the Catholic
yeah,
faith tradition. We're all big on saints. I have about 300 or 400 saints that I really love, but no, but there's and the common thing, the leitmotif, the common theme of anybody that becomes a saint, and even people who don't become saints, but who probably should be named a saint, but is that they undergo great trials of suffering,
yes,
whether it's
yes,
physical or out there in the world, or all their trials. A lot of saints suffered interiorly. We don't see the suffering, and
yep,
it's difficult to have sufferings that people in the rest of the world can see. It's no less difficult to have the internal sufferings that are invisible to everybody else except self and God. And so one saint in particular I leaned on, and that is Saint John of the Cross. He was a Spanish priest back in the 1400s or
yes,
something, and he's somewhat of a controversial figure these days. But that aside, so he members of his own community locked him up in what would be basically an outhouse there in the monastery for 9 months because they didn't like the changes he was trying to make. They tortured him and they starved him, and anyway, the only his only thing that he had for comfort was a little slat at the top of the outhouse where he could peer out and look at the stars at night. Okay. So he endured this for 9 months. And that was his dark night of the soul. And that's basically a metaphor for the darkest times a human, the darkest emotional season a person could go through.
yeah,
That was his dark night of the soul. But what came of that is he composed, of course, without pencil and paper, he composed some of the most exquisitely beautiful Spanish poetry
yes, he
that
did.
still
Yeah,
stands in the world today and is revered as this exquisite expression of beauty and love and God's love. And he did that in the throes of immense emotional and physical pain. And so I turned to him. I'm like, no, I'm not in that kind of situation, but my pain feels that much. And
yeah,
so he found
yeah,
meaning in it.
yeah.
And I would also add that there's one more person that inspired me, and that's Viktor Frankl, who
Oh,
authored
yes,
Man's Search for Meaning.
yes,
He was a young doctor. He was sent to a concentration camp. He was stripped of everything, and he survived. And when he was finally liberated, he wrote a book, Man's Search for Meaning. But um, there's a quote that I lean on, and that is, and it's reflected in my prayer intention. When we are longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves.
yeah, that's
And
right.
that is a pearl that I cling to.
Mm, mm, mm. Um, Interesting. Like I asked you earlier about biblical characters and so on. I've actually come to mind of one particular biblical character who actually had a sense of estrangement, and that was Jacob, the father of Joseph. And if you remember the story, Jacob. Jacob favored his younger son, gave him a lovely cloak and everything. The older brother's really jealous. They threw him in a pit, and then they sold him off to some Aramean traders. But what they did was they grabbed this beautiful cloak, soaked it in goat's blood, and handed it to his father, to Jacob. And in a sense, Jacob was estranged because he had no body to bury, no physical body to bury, and yet, um, yeah, the good end of the story was that Jacob and Joseph reunited. But one of the examples of estrangement is, I've been reading about it, is soldiers who are lost, missing in action, and parents, loved ones not knowing where they are, what's happened to them. So they have this ambivalent grief.
Mhm.
And I think that's a really big grief that you went through. You've come out the other side um, more whole. And I just want to say well done.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have we live near the beach, and often we go walking on the beach, and we find little pieces of glass. All right, and this is one that I found the other day, and I was talking with my wife, and that would have been a broken object or a broken glass bottle chucked out or something. Time and tide, the work of waves and action, currents, has smoothed off the edges, and it's now something actually it's very beautiful. And I often talk about it with people is that time and tide. It just takes time. It takes the embrace of action. We don't like that to say to make something beautiful. And we've collected lots of pieces of glass, and I think my wife is going to make something out of it. Hey, anything final you want to share with the people that are watching, listening?
Um, no, you had asked about resources, and
Oh yeah.
I have one I would like to share. It's called, and this came out several years ago. It's called "How to Know a Person" by David Brooks,
Oh,
and
okay.
he's a famous author. He writes nonfiction. He's an he writes for the New York Times. Um, but this book is basically how to be an illuminator. So when you interact with someone, don't be a diminisher and be negative, but how to get to know them and bring out the best in them. And
Yes.
there are three things, or there are a few things that if you are if you are encounter someone who is going through estrangement, these are things that you can do to help
Yes.
them. Um,
Yes.
and then encounter them with tenderness. Just
Yes.
be comfortable with just giving them a tender gaze of loving kindness. You can't fix the problem or reframe it or tell them to get over it. Just sit with them with a gaze of loving kindness.
That's
Um,
that's
the
great.
another thing, there's like three more. One of them is receptivity, and that means listen to them. Try to decenter yourself. Don't give comparisons of my kid or my
No.
family or this. Just let them center their grief.
Yeah.
Um, and then active curiosity, have an explorer's heart. Explore with them. How does this make you feel? How are you coping? What helps you? What are some good things you remember about your loved one? Take on an explorer's heart. And
That's
there's
good.
two more. One, be generous. A generosity. See them as only see the best in them in this difficult situation, and express to them the best that you see in them, that you know you're doing well under difficult, I mean, you seem to be holding up under difficult circumstances. This has got to be hard. um Try to help them feel that they aren't broken, they're not flawed, they're not defective. And then just treat them as with a holistic attitude, that they are
Hmm.
not their estrangement. That's not their identity. They are they are so much more than this circumstance they're going through right now.
Yeah.
Those are things that would have helped me
Yeah.
if I would have, right. But these are also things that you could self-talk to yourself.
Yes.
So this,
Yes.
I would recommend this book, even though it's not geared toward estrangement. It is has so many things that are applicable to so many
Yeah.
things.
Hey, Peggy, thank you so much for sharing your story. I think it will
Yes.
help a lot of people. If you're watching it and you've got something out of it, please leave a comment below because Peggy and I will be looking for comments.
Okay.
And maybe you want to share it with somebody else. Please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to Turning the Page email list. There's a link. There'll be a link in the notes below to the actual blog post. But thank you, Peggy, and thank you everyone for watching. Bye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.